You were both sales reps at the time, individual contributors, fighting it out on the sales field. Who was the best sales rep back then?
I don't think we actually know that. We were managers together at Datto.
Yeah.
I mean, probably pretty similar.
I would get your opinion on that. What was your view?
Yeah, well, you have put me on the spot.
Reece Appleton and Adam Folb, two leaders who started on the same floor, now shaping cybersecurity across APAC. Reece Appleton, Regional Director APAC at Huntress, built a high-performing go-to-market team across Asia Pacific from the ground up. Adam Folb, head of MSP Asia Pacific at Checkpoint Software, drives channel strategy and partner ecosystems across the region.
Today, they share what it takes to rise from rep to regional leader, and why in sales, good enough is never enough.
Do you believe that an AI-enabled rep is going to be more productive?
An AI-enabled rep will 100% be more productive.
If they want to be productive. That's up to the rep.
But it depends on the use of AI, but 100%.
Do you assess for AI capability in an interview process?
We haven't done that.
Would you start to?
Oof, that's a good question.
Yeah, it's a really good question.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me here today. It's an absolute honor to have you here today, but also to have called you friends for the last decade. We met in 2015. So that was 11 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
And to say that, a decade ago, you guys were top performing individual contributors, to watching you within the Datto business become sales managers and leaders within that organization, to watching your careers flourish, to becoming sales director of a high performing cybersecurity company here in region is phenomenal. And Adam, to be running the entire channel division of Checkpoint in Australia or Asia Pacific is nothing short of amazing. And I'm incredibly proud, and I'm really excited to unpack where we've come from today, where each of you have actually developed your skills and what has allowed you to be in the positions that you are today based on the decisions and the learnings that you've had in the past. So really excited to kick off. Reece, welcome. Adam, welcome. I'm really excited. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. You were both sales reps at the time, individual contributors, fighting it out on the sales field. Who was the best sales rep back then?
I don't think we actually know that, because you were at Autotask.
When we were
managers. We were managers together at Datto.
Yeah.
I mean, probably pretty similar, but me. I mean, I would
get your opinion on that, Bergs. What was your view?
Yeah,
That's boring.
yeah. Well, you have put me on the spot.
Yeah, you put us in this spot. Yeah. And were you new business primarily at Autotask? New business. Okay, so I was account management, so it was slightly different.
Yeah.
But clearly we did well enough for you both hire us into leadership positions.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's right, because Autotask and Datto merged, and there was yourself and probably 10, 15 other people that came across as part of the acquisition. And you were, from the Autotask side, certainly one of the standouts. You were one of the standouts at the time, and one of the standouts that helped to then take the new combined team moving forward. So Reece, you went through a different experience of culture merger, team merger, and continually thrived. And Adam, funny enough, I remember how I met you. It was actually when your dad came in to provide us with some sales coaching back then. And he was just a phenomenal operator, phenomenal man. And he told me how he had this son who was in sales, and he was doing something in like financial sales or something. And I thought, if he's 1/10 of you, Lewis, I want to meet him and see if he can join. Turned out I was 1/11. You're 1/11, yeah, which is still good enough to take us to the next stage. But look, I think that you were both incredibly strong, and also from my perspective, like what stood out is the solution salesmanship. So the ability to be super inquisitive, super thoughtful, to do deep discovery with customers, take them on that journey, and then take them through to closure. So both, I would say, elite sellers back then.
I have a question.
Sounds like you're sitting on the fence a little bit.
That I've only really thought of, just as you mentioned, you had the cultural shift coming over from Autotask to Datto, because all I know is our experience. We had a cultural shift of Autotask coming into Datto. And we went through a lot of, that was my first time as a manager and as a leader when that happened. And then we went through this whole performance management out, hiring keeping the best people. What was your experience coming into Datto from Autotask? Because I know Adam Ross had also a really good culture over there, and then that brought it in. But what was that experience like for you?
That's a really good question. I think the acquisition, it probably wasn't as difficult as a lot of acquisitions from a cultural alignment perspective, because we, you and Adam had lived together and worked together, and so we knew each other's teams from a social standpoint. Also, I think it's a different experience if you're a high performer versus if you're not, because
could you feel that when you came in?
For sure.
That's what we were looking at. That was the mandate that Bergl gave to us, was let's look at the high performers and see who we want to keep.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's with any merger and acquisition, that's on everyone's mind, right? Like, it's not 100% certain that everyone here is gonna merge and stay and thrive together. And so, you look at your performance, and if you're, a C player, or you're at 60%, 70%, then that's when, panic stations set in, and that would impact the way you view that cultural merge, right?
I would counter back with your statement of who is it we want to keep. I think that that's part of it. The other piece is just a slightly different stance on that, is who are going to be the ones that want to form the new business that we are combined together, and let's actually have some mutual conversations with everyone and going, okay, this is what the new business, this is our new vision, this is our new operating rhythm. You've come from something different, which has worked for you. Is this viable for you? Is this something that you think you can thrive in? And we had a lot of those conversations, and it was actually, to be honest, it was a lot of conversations of them opting out and saying, you know what, thank you, I appreciate the opportunity, but I think that I'm probably best not suited for this. So
yeah, you're right. And it wasn't just performance; it was also, we kept a lot of people that seemed to be genuinely invested in. Yeah, this is a journey I want to be on. I'm ready to go on it together. And
it was certainly a higher velocity sales motion at Datto than it was at Autotask, given the complexity of the solution and sales cycle. So the Datto was incredibly high velocity in terms of the amount of partners and customers and opportunities that you're working at any given time, and that was a big shift coming from Autotask as well. Interesting.
When I'm curious, when we look at leadership styles, I was working with both of you again, Adam. It was you first, where you came in as an individual contributor, and then became a sales manager. Reece, you came in initially as an individual contributor, and then became a manager in the new business. When you reflect on my leadership as a regional leader, when you reflect back, what are the things, or is there anything that stands out that I did wrong?
Oof. It's hard to say what was wrong. There might have been nuances here and there, but we all ended up at a place that was phenomenal and exceptional. So even if there might have been wrong things, all those things led to where we became, which I wouldn't change. The only thing that I could probably think of, and I don't know if wrong is the right word, because we don't know if the outcome would have remained the same, but in that final year, when we started to feel the shift and feel the demise of what we had with people coming in, won't mention names of who they were, but we all know who they were. Could we have done something different to maybe protect what we had? Could we have something different to change that outcome? We accepted those people in like they were going to help us, and then they ended up ruining our business. Is there something that could have happened? And I was probably too junior or too naive or whatever it was to look at that. But I know that you had a lot of thoughts about it, and we had many discussions about it. Is there something that we could have done to preserve what we had just a little bit longer, or was that just the natural course of time that it was for that 5 year of an absolute gem of a time we had at Datto?
Yeah, it's a good point. And just as you were talking, I jumped out, and I would say what I could have, should have done differently. Would I have done it differently? I don't know. But one thing was really important to me was protecting the culture that we had, and making sure that we had, again, high performing culture where people wanted to be there. I remember to this day, I thought it was really funny. Mitch McMurray had performed well, and I said, if you can achieve this extra milestone, take Friday off so you can have an extended weekend. And he goes, that's not really a reward for me. I want to be in the office.
Right.
And that was the culture that we had where people want to come in. We were a really, really tight business unit. But on your reflection, we were a regional office for a North American business. And I started when I was 30, and I guess I left when I was 36. So I was there, and I always reflect. It was a perfect when I joined Datto. It was the perfect inflection point of, I think they got a good deal and I got a good deal. I was just at the right time to step into a role that was very demanding and took a lot of energy, and that's what I wanted to do. And they got someone that wasn't at a super senior level with war wounds on them already, and with a super high price tag. But one reflection is when I look at, and I've had exposure to working, at Pax8 as an example at a later date, is the importance of representing your team and region at a global level and making sure that you've got a voice and being able to manage the international stakeholders that are going to impact your business. That's something I didn't do. I would say I didn't even do it poorly because the US always ran their meetings and team meetings at either 11 p.m. or 1 a.m. And I remember saying at the time, I said, I like my sleep, and I think I'm more productive in the next day if don't have a disrupted sleep. However, that is something that, again, if I had my time again, I would probably reflect on, how do you balance that effectively to make sure that if you've got marketing issues, if you've got product issues, if you've got support issues, you are there advocating for your team more consistently at a global level. And I don't think the US realized quite what we had. What we had was incredibly special and high performing, but because I wasn't out there, but representing that on the midnight calls, they had doubts, and that's why they then decided to put their own people in that they thought could do a better job than what we could do.
Even though we were growing at 66% year on year for 5 years. And I remember countless times, let's be honest, we had a really fun culture. It wasn't just high performing. It was also, we were mates and we went out and we had fun. I remember there were probably 2 occasions where I think one was HR and one was another sales leader that said, this can't last forever. And every year we kept proving them wrong. We kept the same culture, yet we kept high performance. We kept delivering results. We kept overachieving. It was a really special.
What do you put that down to? Why do you think we had that?
I think if we knew that, then we would be able to replicate it, which is almost impossible. And we've all tried in different ways. Yeah. And you and I had a similar experience. We went somewhere straight after Datto. Didn't quite work out. We spent 2 years at ChargeBee, the same as Jump Cloud, 2 years. Didn't really work out. Now we're in a place that we finally found home again. But I think it's one of those things that you. Right place, right opportunity, right time, right people. Everything just clicked at the right time for that 5-year period. The people we hired were very careful about who we hired. We hired a few donkeys, but you said, you always said, hire fast, but fire faster. So we got rid of them, but the people that we hired were very, very careful. And I think you had a secret sauce of that gut feel of, is this person right for my business?
Yeah.
Not just, is this person good performer and can be good at sales? Is this the right person for my business?
Yeah.
And I think that carried through the organization. And we used to invite random sales reps, even junior sales reps, into the interview process just to see if the fabric felt right. I think that was a really, really important part. So that was probably what I bring down to in terms of the people. That's why we had a really, really successful business in terms of the people, because we hired really well.
Thinking about the kind of regional success from a longevity perspective, I think, and this is not a negative, but I think and this is kind of what I've been thinking about now in my current role is when you hire for culture fit, sometimes you just hire the same people again and again and again, and even if they're high performers, locally we see that as a positive. There's a high performance culture, but externally, it looks or can look like it's a boys' club, or do you know what I mean? And so what I've been thinking about lately is, how do you hire for culture fit, which is people that aren't necessarily cookie cutter, the same reps, but how do they're still high performance, but they bring something else to the business. They bring a level of diversity, not just in terms of like DEI stuff, right, but in terms of how they think and how they operate. And I think that may have helped provide a bit of longevity, because it's not just Bergl and his boys club. Do you know what I mean? It's like there's other operators in there which kind of bring something different and can maybe talk to, I don't know, like when you bring in a CFO as a CEO, right? It's a different.
Yeah, right.
Reece, I want to touch on your career journeys. You've been with Huntress for what, 3 years now?
4 years in September.
4 years in September. Phenomenal. And I've been watching you from the sideline and super proud of what you've achieved. And you were just before we jumped on telling me that your team in region is 50-ish employees now. What has that journey been like for you, from being the first guy on the ground to now being the regional leader, running a significant revenue and employee size? Like, what is that been like?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of 30 odd in that GTM team that want to make that clear. But the journey so far at Huntress has been an interesting one. I think it certainly helps when the product is very good and does what you say it does. One of the secret sources with Huntress is our perception within the community in which we work with. And so if you break it out into kind of MSP and also kind of cybersecurity in general, we've got very good practitioners in that understand the MSP space, that understand what works for MSPs. They're on Reddit and they're really focused on that partner enablement piece and community build. And then on the security side, we have just very good security expertise and capability that, we've got security researchers that have millions of followers on YouTube, and it's like we've got good capability there. So that certainly helps. So I don't want to take all the credit.
Going from 1 to 10 is different from 10 to 20 to 20 to 50.
Yeah.
I guess what the challenges, lessons learned, gotchas.
Yeah. It's a good point actually. 1 to 10 is different to 10 to 10 to 20. If I look at the kind of phases that we've been through over the last 3 years, I think initially building a sales team and working with a sales team, it was all about kind of salespersonship. How do you become the best, salesperson in the business? So, I would argue that we had the best discovery. We worked on kind of that spin methodology, and we were very good at that, salespersonship aspect. Then we've gotten to more. Okay, we're very good salespeople now.
I want to focus on that that discovery spin selling piece there. In my role, having transitioned from SaaS leader into recruiting SaaS reps, one of the things that I've noticed is that there's a lot of mediocre reps out there. Yeah. And I've actually enjoyed recently with reps reaching out to me, pitching me and going, let me give you a demo. And I'm interested in what they're talking about. 2, I'm assessing them as well, going, how good are you? And it's mind-boggling how poor their discovery is. Yeah. Like it's
straight into demo.
Straight as a demo.
Yeah.
I had 2 this week. Yeah. Let me ask you.
1 questions. Yeah. What are challenges? Okay, cool. Let me share what I could do.
Really get that. Yeah. So, and that's I really think the fundamental, the heartbeat of a sale is really understanding their customers. So like, what is your approach to enablement training, discovery call? And like, how did you do that? Because it seems like that's the first thing you went to is
build his salespersonship. Yeah. So, I think in order to build salespersonship, and particularly in that discovery piece, you need the right frameworks and methodologies in place, because you need something to teach. So we've shifted to MEDDPICC as an organization. That's something that we've kind of done as soon as I've come on board. We never had a
qualification.
Not really. Never had a thorough qualification process. So MEDDPICC is the way I think about the qualification framework, and then the sales methodology is the qualification framework is the what. Like, what are the questions we need to answer? What is the information we need to get? And then the sales methodology, like spin, for example, is how do we go about doing that? So providing you got that MEDDPICC there, you understand the information you need. And then spin is, well, this is how you ask the right questions to abstract that information. Particularly with the challenges you mentioned before, right? I will say to a rep, if I'm being sold to, my problem today is with X, Y, Z, and I go, okay, perfect. This is how our product might solve that challenge. when actually you need to uncover, all right, this is your challenge. How much of a challenge is it? How much is it impacting the business, you as an individual? How much of a priority is solving that impact? And then you can move to that needs payoff, which is kind of how your solution solves that challenge. And that whole piece is, even if I look at our reps now, which are very high performers and high quality, that's still a piece which needs consistent coaching.
Yeah. Do you find that, and we use MEDDPICC as well internally, and I understand the concept of it, understand why it's important, and there's the information we need to know, and from a forecasting perspective, we can really see maybe what deals are real and whatnot. Do you think that a fully subscribed person in one or the other is the right way to go about it? Or do you still find that I pull a little bit from Spin, I pull a little bit from solution selling, whatever it's called, a little bit from MEDDPICC, and you sort of make it your own, and then that's how you go and teach your sales reps on how to go and be a good sales rep? Just bits and pieces of what you think is right? Or because some people just focus on some methodologies and this is what I do.
Well, I look to differentiate a qualification framework to a sales methodology. I know it's kind of bundled in the same thing, but
I think they're often used interchangeably.
Right, they are. Correct. Yeah, like your qualification framework is there to qualify, right? It tells you the information that you need to capture. And in a sales methodology like new solution selling or challenger or Spin is like, that's how we get that information and how we then position that information away, which drives value and pushes the deal forward. So I think they're two different things.
Yep.
I think every organization, without doubt, needs a standard qualification framework.
Yep.
Because it drives consistency in terms of language, how you qualify opportunities, how you forecast. From a sales methodology standpoint, I think, yes, you can have something consistent across the board. I think that helps from a coaching standpoint, but not always, I don't think.
Yeah.
Do you align to a particular methodology?
I love Spin and new solution selling. So using tools like mutual action plans and things like that, which you pull from new solution selling.
The irony is I actually recommended the new solution selling to someone last week. As I said, but I've got a problem with upsell, cross-sell. And I said, what do you recommend? And I went through and I looked, and I think it was, when was it written? It was written over 20 years ago.
Probably it's 20 years ago.
But it's not new. It's still new solution selling. It is new to many people. Exactly.
And to that point, though, like the sales, I think the fundamentals of sales don't necessarily change that much. The execution and things will change. Technologies come out.
The fun processes, that all changes.
Fundamentals remain the same, I think.
Yeah, I'm also a fan of Spin. Mostly because it teaches you how to ask questions.
Correct. Yeah.
And I've always said, what is the difference between a good person and a good salesperson and a great salesperson is the questions that they ask. And that comes down to Spin and a little bit of Challenger as well, because you used to teach us Challenger sales at Datto. And that's sort of where I changed my approach from. It's not just the questions, it's also the challenging. The whole concept about it is challenge that status quo, challenge, is that actually right what you're doing, or change their belief system a little bit. That's what I learned out of it. And that's why I asked the question originally. It's over my career, which primarily from the Datto days was where I picked up a lot of the most successful things that I still use today, is a bit from here, a bit from there. And now I just have a gut feel. So when I'm in a training environment, or I'm enabling my reps or whatever it might be, there's no one way that I do it. It's depending on the situation, or depending on the opportunity, or depending on where they're at in their cycle and in their journey, would depend on how I coach and train them. And I think that is something that you can't teach. That is where, and we were talking about experience and just natural talent and all that sort of thing. It's natural capability, natural talent can outperform experience, because if you don't have the right experience, then the experience is not the right experience. But experience teaches you, what have I learned from the best parts of what I've been in part of my career, and then executed on that.
Is there anything that you've had to unlearn since the Datto days?
I don't know if unlearn is the right word, but one thing that I've learned that we did at Datto that had burnt me was we treated Datto like it was our business, which I think in a lot of ways is very good. We bleeded the blood, of Datto. And if you do that in a large organization that you're just an employee of, that can burn you. And that's what happened at Jump Cloud. I took that mentality and then they went through a global restructure and you got made redundant, and all of a sudden in one day you just gone like that. And so then that emotionally and personally, like you take a personality, a personal touch to that, and you're like, oh, I don't know, like I can't believe that just happened to me, and you get really down. Removing yourself from that, still operating like you're an owner and entrepreneur, that's still my mindset, is operating like this is my business and I'm the CEO of the business and all that methodology. But if you actually feel it, then you can get really, really hurt. And then you can also then detach yourself from, this isn't the most important thing in my whole world. My family is now most important.
Yeah.
And obviously since Datto, I've now had kids and all that sort of stuff. So there's a different perspective on that side of things.
Yeah.
But at Datto, we really ingrained in everyone, bleed blue blood, this is it. And even at the end of the Datto days, we felt like, wow, all that sweat, blood and tears that we did for Datto just went out the window at the very end. And I think that's something that I've learned. Maybe it's not an unlearning question, but it's something that I've learned.
It's really fascinating. And I think that there's what we had was special, no doubt.
Yeah.
Also, what I've come to realize, just with greater exposure across like the entire industry as a whole, is that the reality was 2012 to 2021 was a rising tide. The economy was strong, like nothing could really go wrong.
Yeah.
And I think cause and effect is, one is we were all winning. We had a rising tide, people were buying, we were very strong sellers. But talking about the solution selling training piece, I think we're in a bit of a crisis at the moment from a salesmanship perspective, because many of the sales leaders and the sales reps that were in that rising tide were not trained, were not enabled, and they've come into new roles.
Didn't have to be trained.
They didn't have to be trained.
Right.
And now you can order take. Anyone can order take, but successful people, the successful sellers that are selling in a downturn economy or a soft economy, which I think we're in now, but those that can truly solution sell.
Yeah.
So that's one of my observations, that it's difficult. And then the other piece is, in the downturn economy, people lose their jobs. And again, shit falls downhill.
Yeah.
Your boss's boss is under pressure, and then that sort of filters down, and that kind of distills the culture as well. So I think that we've all been through like a pretty tough time, and a lot of people have come away going, like I gave my blood, sweat, and tears to this organization, and they just let me go like that.
Yeah.
So there's almost, people are a bit burnt and singed. But if you get everyone incredibly bought in, then
it's another. That's why it's a little bit of a double-edged sword. That one, it's, you want your people to feel that way, but you also don't want them to feel burnt out or feel really underappreciated. That. What have you done then?
One of the if I would say the gaps that I would say that I've got, or I've had, is like, I've come from a very SMB velocity sales career. It's been heavily in the IT channel for 15 years. And it is high velocity, and it's not necessarily, complex multi-stakeholder selling. It's relatively, it's relatively slim. So as I'm in my new career is looking at like, what are the different skill sets that are required to solve problems at a bigger magnitude, enterprise, mid-market, complex sale, point solution. Like it's not necessarily just the same person that is going to solve each of those different problems.
Right.
So I've always, for example, when we hired at Datto, like my 5 characteristics that we would look for would be IQ, EQ, drive, inquisition, coachability, and then the culture fit as well. That was one thing that, particularly for junior reps, I still think that plays true. But when you're looking at more senior reps in more complex sales, I think you probably need to have someone that has sold a similar sort of complexity, or has got a skill set in a particular part of the type of sale that you're doing. And that's, I guess, something that I'm not unlearning, but I've learned that actually
there's a gap there, and
there's a gap there, and actually now I can identify, like, is this person good at transactional sales, at complex sales, at vertical sales, at point solution sales, and where they've come from and the sort of personality that they are is going to mean that they're going to be more appropriate for a particular type of role. So that's something I've enjoyed learning.
Yeah, interesting, nice.
Yeah,
it's really interesting you say that. I've gone through something similar with hiring for, particularly as we moved into mid-market, we're going up upmarket, but also since we've kind of moved from that salespersonship focus to operational excellence and disciplined execution, like the leaders that you need are different, and the domain experience is less important. So, for example, someone that's worked in cybersecurity, for example, is less important to me than someone that's worked in the same sales motion or velocity.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you touched on it as well. Is it's almost, there's a skill set, right? That's methodology is a skill set.
Yeah.
Experience is, in a way, is a bit of a, like you've got that skill. What can you learn? You can learn a product. You can learn an industry.
Yeah, correct.
But you can't. I call it a muscle. Have you got a muscle for that is used to working in a particular rhythm? And that's the piece that I think you need to look for.
Yeah, for sure.
So, just shifting gears slightly, we talked about where you both are today, people leadership, running sales teams for global organizations. When you reflect back on the last 5 to 10 years, is there anything that you think has fundamentally changed in the world of sales?
The tools. Definitely the tools in which we can use, I think is the most profound change in sales.
Give me an example.
Well, I mean, we'll put AI to one side because that I'm sure is going to be brought up in some sort of a topic at some point. But the use of CRMs, that's only a Salesforce introduced that, and not everyone brought it up straight away. The use of maybe methodologies or qualifications like MEDDPICC, that has improved in sales. The amount of people that are coming in with sales training courses and executive coaching and that sort of stuff, I think is also increased, which has maybe made the broad spectrum of salespeople a little bit better, a little bit higher. But fundamentally, and you mentioned this before, the art of selling hasn't really changed that much in terms of how we go about it. Yeah. But the way in which we go around the processes, the tools, I think that has fundamentally changed dramatically, even over the last, especially this AI era, lead generation tools. I mean, you don't really need a lead gen now until you can get an AI and just go and get a whole bunch of leads and then go and qualify them yourself, for example. So I think the way in which we go around sales, about sales, has changed. But it's
so is what you're saying, if we look at a funnel from a marketing prospected lead to an SQL, like a lot of that top of the funnel stuff, there's tools in there to like automate.
Right, to automate and change the way that you have to focus your attention. I mean, back when I first started my career at New Horizons Learning, I was an SDR and AE and AM, even bloody accounts payable. I had to go and call people to pay their bills. And my SDR work was, I had to go onto Google and I had to go onto Google Maps and I had to go and find my own lists. I used to walk around to buildings and look at the directory of the buildings to see what buildings in there, see what companies are in there. And I had to go and dial those ones, and I had to do a certain amount. You don't have to do that anymore, right? I mean, maybe you didn't have to do that when I was there, and I did, but there's absolutely no reason that you have to go and do something like that now. So the stuff around you to go and help you to get enough leads, I think is huge. But fundamentally, the way in which we sell, the questions we ask, building rapport, building relationships, getting that experience, I think that's largely the same.
I think I would agree with that in terms of what's changed over the last 5 years, I think, or 10 years. I think the bottom of funnel in terms of that salespersonship and the sales fundamentals is probably the same. I think top of funnel, if you think about the tools that we're using now, there's like, 6 Sense, which is intent. So you can see prospect intent. You've got outreach, which you can build sequences and automate outreach, and so I think it's become a lot easier from a top of funnel standpoint to reach people, but everyone's doing it, and so it becomes incredibly hard to cut through the noise and convert those conversations, right? So I think top of funnel has become a lot harder over the last 5 years because of the tools and
because everybody's doing it.
Correct. Yeah.
But then to cut through the noise requires that same skill set of a person that did 10 years ago today to go and get the attention of a potential buyer or a prospect.
Yeah, it just means, aligning value proposition to persona within your ICP and having a real strong story there around the problems you solve is really, really important.
Yeah. Over the years, I mean, this conversation has been going on for at least a decade. The buyers are more aware. They've done their own research before they get to the salesperson. Are you noticing any trends there? Is that any different in terms of the buyers are a lot more educated by the time you speak to them?
Yeah, absolutely. They're more educated. It's a lot easier to access information. I mean, most people would probably just go into ChatGPT and say, what are the top 3 email security products that you can buy, right? And then now they have some sort of an understanding before. I mean, the ability for a naturally gifted salesperson is the way that I'll frame that. The gift of the gab, that sort of a person who did really well 10 years ago, that just relied on an SE to do their demos or relied on the product to sell itself, but just was able to go and generate a conversation, are probably less successful today, because the skillful sellers today are also skillful sellers, but they also really need to have some product knowledge. They really need to know what they're talking about, how it impacts that business. And that way you cut through the noise.
Yeah.
And also a buyer can then see, oh, not only does this, but you're asking good questions. They're really understanding my business and all the things that makes a salesperson a good salesperson. They also know what they're talking about. And that coupled together is a really powerful.
That's interesting. So I want to double click on that piece in particular. So when we look at the role of the salesperson, are we saying that the role is actually, we're expecting more from a salesperson today than 5 or 10 years ago?
I think so.
And you're probably, I know you're thinking there, but I remember you at Autotask, you could demo the product better than the SEs.
Yeah.
You never ever needed an SE, right? And you were just that way inclined that you needed to know it inside and out. But
yeah, that's how we were wired.
Yeah.
But the people in our team were not wired that way. Some of them could not answer.
But that's
what
not changed, though. That's not changed. Like, the successful reps then had better product knowledge, had better industry insights, were able to have that more consultative approach. I don't think that's changed.
Let me ask a layer question on that. Is, are you seeing any difference? And again, I've heard this topic a little bit in terms of the expectation of a new business rep is transitioning a little bit more to 360. So the requirement for, like in the worlds that we lived in, a lot of the time that there would be an SDR booking the appointments, and they just wouldn't have to do any prospecting themselves. Like, I'm hearing and seeing a lot more that, this BDM or AE needs to go out there and they need to do their own lead generation.
Yep.
That is a critical part of their role. Is that, like, do you have that expectation that your AEs are doing a certain percentage of their own lead gen?
We do expect account executives to do their own lead gen.
Do you have an SDR team?
We have an SDR team as well. So, from an AE perspective, I think, again, I don't think this is anything different or changed. I think the high performing AEs have always done their own prospecting, have always made sure going into a quarter they've got 2, 3, 4 pipeline.
They're filling their own,
whatever it is. I don't think that's changed at all. I don't necessarily agree with the whole 360 approach. I think it is going to depend on, again, that sales velocity. If you're an account executive and you're bringing on, 10 customers a month, or in a high velocity business, where do you have time to prospect as well as account manage when you've got 10, 20, 30, 40 customers? I don't think it becomes, I would disagree with how impactful that is.
I share that sentiment as well. As I'm sitting on the sideline and watching a lot of companies say, yeah, we expect them to do their own lead generation. We also are expecting them to do some of the account management, some of the customer success pieces as well. Yeah. But like I look at it from a productivity perspective. Like I want my sales rep closing high value tickets, and when they're spending time doing non-revenue generating activity, then why not pay a low cost resource to do that? That's my opinion. I think part of it is just pressure on reducing costs of GTM teams, maybe in a slightly downturn economy. I don't know.
The one thing that I probably would say that 360 does is that it forces a rep to understand the full cycle of what happens pre, post, surrounding that lead qualification. So then they can go and appreciate what those tasks actually do. Because often you find that salespeople that have just jumped into an account management role that have never done SDRing don't actually know what it takes to do the grunt work of cold calling and getting rejected and doing that. And that's a really important part of being a successful salesperson, is going through that experience and building up that resilience and having to dial the phone 100 times a day and get yelled at and whatever that is. That's all part of that experience that teaches you to be resilient, or teaches you to, think on your feet. So I think 360 allows for that to happen, in which you just understand. But I completely agree with you. I mean, it's not necessary nowadays, and you want your people focused on what they need to be focused on. And any distractions are just that, distractions.
I think so. When you're looking at, because you're in growth mode at the moment, what is your role today?
Head of MSP for Asia Pacific.
Head of MSP for Asia Pacific for Checkpoint. Big company, big role, big opportunity. I imagine big growth plans looking forward as well. How do you distinguish when you're interviewing reps between someone that's high quality and potentially low quality? Like, what are the 3 or 4 characteristics that you're trying to assess when you're interviewing candidates?
Yeah, so I guess the top things that I look for initially when I'm interviewing is, one, sort of what we're doing now, conversational. Can they be conversational? Is it very much just one-word answers? Definitely the questions that they ask, and not just at the end when you say, do you have any questions for me?
Yeah.
Questions throughout, so that the conversational nature. And also the type of questions that they're asking, not just, like, what's the split of the commission plan? Or do I get some time off? Or is it hybrid? Not those, like, those silly ones that they ask sometimes. It's, more like, okay, so when you go into, I don't know, a prospect, what are the top things that they usually say that they have that would make your product not fit? So something that really, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Instantly that person just goes a little bit higher in my books of should I move them to the next round?
Curious.
Yeah, the curious nature of them.
Yeah.
So those are really, and if those all line up, then all of a sudden I get this feeling like, okay, this is a person that I want to go and move forward. And then maybe some presentation rounds or something like that might weed them out, or whatever it might be, or salary expectations, whatever that might be. But I would rate that top of my
Curiosity.
of my thought process and conversational questions asked, curiosity. Could I travel a lot for work. And when I travel, sometimes it's with reps, sometimes it's not. When it is with rep, do I want to be on the road with this person? Do I want to, when I'm in a meeting with a prospect or a really big partner of ours, would I be happy to just say, what are your thoughts? Hand them the floor or not? And I think the gut feel, you can get that pretty quickly in a 20, 30 minute conversation with someone.
Yeah. I think that the key characteristics in terms of skill set, it's going to depend on the role and the seniority of the role. But in terms of those fundamental capabilities that you look for, or characteristics that you look for when interviewing a sales rep, I think it's what you said before, right? EQ, IQ is critically important. You often get very intelligent people, but their EQ is lacking somewhat. So EQ, IQ, coachability, 100%.
How do you look for that in an interview?
Coachability is really hard to look for within an interview. I think, sporting backgrounds, or if they're high performers in sport, music, or whatever it may be, there's a degree of coachability there, right? So they've been coached and they've been able to apply that. Within the interview process itself, sometimes the first person in stage 1 will give them some feedback, and then you in the second interview you see if they've then applied that or taken that on. So it is very hard though.
I used to do that in interviews as well. As I would give someone feedback, I'd always find a flaw, even if it was small, even if I had to make it up slightly, and I would give it to them and I just watch their reaction. And sometimes you can see by the way they look at you with their eyes whether they are taking it on board, or whether
they're rejecting the completely.
They're rejecting it. Sometimes they glaze over. Sometimes they get angry.
Defensive.
I don't direct. Is that?
Yeah. And you're okay, cool.
It's like, yeah, you're right. I just made that up.
Okay. But interesting with coachability is that it's not just asking for feedback and being open to hearing feedback, but it's then also the application of that feedback, right? So often reps will be like, hey, how can I improve? How can I do this? How can I do that better? You provide that feedback. They say, yes, awesome, I'll work on that. But the application is off. So I think that's the hard thing to interview for. Curiosity, I think, is also really important. So those would be and also, and again, this is hard to interview for, but that just ambition and drive to be successful.
Yeah.
Again, those backgrounds around, if they're excelled in sport or music or whatever it is, often is a demonstration of that. But that's also hard sometimes to interview for.
I remember you used to say when we were hiring at Datto that it wasn't necessary that they had to have a degree, but you always favored it, not because of the degree itself, but because they showed commitment for 3 or 4 years to get something done, an accomplishment, to get to an achievement. So it's nothing to do with what they studied or why they studied or anything like that. It was you committed yourself for 3, 4 years, whatever else, and you got that degree, and that sort of showed the background of can this person actually commit to me, or they're just going to jump after 6 months of me training them.
Yeah, I think it's, especially for SDRs or junior roles, like demonstrate that you've got some sort of grit.
Yeah.
I want to flip the question. When you're interviewing someone and you think this person's got potential, what are the 1, 2, 3 things that a candidate has said to you as part of a process that are giving you the ick, and you've been like, that's killed it?
Asking me how much time off they can have.
Has someone actually asked you that?
Yeah. How flexible is this role, and what is the personal leave period? Like, what does that look like? Question 3, maybe in an interview. Yeah. Personal leaves now. You could go.
I think also, what is the expectation at home when you're working from home? Well, the expectation when you're working from home is to be working from home.
Someone asks you that?
Yeah.
What is the expectation when I work from home?
Yeah, like, are the
That
hours
you're
flexible?
working from home.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's awful.
That's-
So any questions around that? Maybe not. I mean, they're allowed to ask those questions, of course, but there's a time and a place to ask those questions. Maybe at the end of the cycle, whatever it is, just so they understand. Hey, yep, you're looking really good for this role. Is there anything else like casually that you want to know? Maybe that's okay. But interview 1, coming in and asking these questions, I think that's definitely like turn off red flag. It just shows you said you can't really see motivation and ambition and drive. That shows me that you don't really have that.
Or EQ.
Yeah, right. I mean, it also depends on why they're asking that question. If they have kids, there could be circumstances.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we're 100% work from home organization.
Yep.
I don't really care about time you put in, but it's the output. It's the output.
Yep.
Right. And so if a rep says, "Hey, I need to take 2 hours off here. I need to do this. I need to do that." Fine. Providing the output's there,
Yep.
I don't mind.
Yep.
But asking that as one of the first questions in the first interview is a bit of an alarm.
How much can I get away with here?
Yeah.
What's an example of a hiring mistake that you've made, that you've learned from?
A hiring mistake that I've made, there was a particular SDR, turned out to be quite toxic to the team and just the culture in general. And during the interview process, he wanted to meet me in person. He wanted to meet me at a cafe in person, to meet me face to face before he wanted to work with us.
Which is a good thing.
Well, I don't necessarily know whether that's a red flag or not, but it turned out to be a red flag because I can't explain it.
So if someone asked you to do that now in a new interview, would you now question why they're doing that?
I think this is going to sound awful probably on camera, but I think there's a time and a place. Like, I'm a final interview with an SDR who, is reporting to a sales manager. And I don't know if I was an SDR, if I was an account executive, I don't know if I'd ask that
The regional director
to go for a coffee. Like, can I take you away from work outside of the process and take you for a coffee?
That's interesting perspective.
And I always thought it was a good thing. I was like, this guy seems very invested and showing up and putting the extra work in, but it turned out to be just very, very bad hire. And
What did that translate to once you hired them?
Would undermine me to other leaders in the business.
No.
Yeah. Would step all over
Other people
in the business.
Yeah, right.
And so I don't know whether it's a sense of
Would that be entitlement?
entitlement, maybe. Yeah.
Or their way of trying to show that I'm important in this business. I'm getting my name out there.
I think so, yeah. And it was, maybe entitlement, maybe how can I maneuver myself as high in this business as quickly as possible without thinking about, any impact on culture or teammates.
Yeah.
And that was a really interesting.
A little bit of arrogance, maybe, as well.
Complete arrogance as well. Complete arrogance. So complete entitlement, complete arrogance.
Yeah, it's
Arrogance.
top.
Yeah. And I did not think about that. I was like, this is showing commitment and being on the front foot and being proactive. But, thinking about it,
Yeah, that's a really interesting
Yeah.
perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing in hiring, I mean, a hiring mistake, or maybe made a little bit of mistake here and there in the people that we've hired. But one of the things that I have made the mistake of, and I think a lot of people do, is hiring too fast. Maybe you really need this role filled. Maybe it's that, the recruiting process and the interviewing process is tiring and it takes a lot out of your day and it takes you away from your job and everything. And if you do it a few times and you meet the wrong people and eventually it's like, this is how much longer is this going to take? And eventually it's like, all right, they're good enough.
Yeah.
That's when you can get into, sometimes you get lucky.
Correct.
Good enough. Yeah. Sometimes you get really lucky and like, I dodged the bullet there. I got a really good one. More often than not, that's not true. And then you end up, either trying to make it work or firing them and having to do the same thing over and again. So I think, it's really important to make sure you're hiring the right people.
So you were saying that you knew that they probably weren't the best, but you felt they were
Good enough.
Good enough for the period of time that you've been hiring candidates, interviewing. Yeah. Good enough is not good enough.
Good enough is not good enough.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. I do want to transition to the conversation of AI a little bit. How is, really broad question, like how is AI impacting you as a sales leader today?
How is AI? AI is not impacting me as a sales leader per se. I think, to your point, as the tools and the use of AI is driving additional productivity from a rep perspective. I think if you look at, maybe 36 or even maybe 12 months, 24 months, 36 months in the future, there's certain components within that sales process which just disappear, I think.
Because AI is good for us.
Because, and I think about and again, this is probably going to cause some discussion, but the inbound SDR, for example, if I have someone that has high intent that wants to speak to an account executive, why do I want to put them in front of a lower skill an SDR first to qualify, when actually there are AI tools that are very good at doing that today?
Yep. And
so you're removing friction from that buying journey.
I agree with that.
So I think it's not necessarily impacting me as a sales leader, but in terms of the when you think about what the team looks like and what the team can leverage to be more productive, it's having a pretty massive impact.
How do you assess AI tools? Because I imagine that you're getting prospected and solicited by a whole bunch of companies promising the best things in sliced bread with their AI tool. Like, how do you know when to engage and when not to engage?
So I mean, we have an internal AI policy with the AI tools that we're allowed to use. We're a cybersecurity company, so we have to be very careful with what we use. But one of the problems that we see, or what we're seeing from an AI perspective, is that they're shiny new tools, right? And so, you have each rep or each sales leader building an AI agent to do this, an AI agent to do that, an AI agent to do this. And so there's this duplication of effort that we're seeing. And there's this use of AI, which is not necessarily consistent across the team. That's something that I think is not necessarily a problem, but something that you need to manage to make sure that the use of AI within the team is effective, across the board.
Yeah, and you're not just chopping and changing tools and everything. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because I think, and I've obviously I have a lot of conversations, and being a cyber company as well, lots of restrictions on what we can and can't use for our work. And we're obviously investing heavily in AI as a company in terms of our products and securing AI products out there, because everyone's forgetting about the security for some reason. We're just sticking an AI agent on there and forgetting about that. There needs to be security protocols in there. So we're really focused on that as a company. But one of the conversations that I've been having, and a lot of MSPs are quite AI intuitive, and they're actually going out there and doing it, is when someone says, I want AI in my business, or I want to be an AI business, what does that actually mean? Most of the time, it means we want some automation.
Yeah.
That's what I want. My business processes are in shambles, or I could benefit from this, and you want automation, and that AI can help with that, but that's not what AI is designed to do. And then there's a lot of organizations out there that go, I need to do something, but I don't even know where to start. I don't even know what I can do. Can someone help me?
Yeah.
And very few people are able to answer that or have a tool that can answer that question. It says, well, why don't you start with this and just throw some information in there and just see what it spits out. I think a lot of people are missing that gap right now. But there's definitely influencers out there. There's definitely people out there that are making it easier to transition to an AI world. The other conversation I was having, my brother's just about to start an AI company to design for exactly that. What's the first step in an organization that can help with pretty much anything? But this is where I could start my AI transformation journey. Is one of the things that he's found, or that they're trying to solve for, is AI at an organization level right now is not really cohesive. Not everyone is using the same sort of things, maybe a co-pilot here or there, whatever it is, but a lot of individuals are really invested in AI.
Yeah.
So those individuals are really getting productive and they're doing really cool things and everything. And that's not a shared intelligence model across the organization. How can we make that? So then you're actually encouraging the use of AI and saying, like, who's using AI in the organization? Oh, me. What are you using it for? That's really cool. Can you share what you're doing with some other people so we can have a shared intelligence, a shared understanding of how we're using it and make it beneficial for the company, and not just this one sales rep that's doing a phenomenal job of AI use and no one else is experiencing because there's no AI strategy. Yeah. That's one piece that I think is really interesting that we can try and get some opportunity from.
Do you believe that an AI-enabled rep is going to be more productive?
No, an AI-enabled rep will 100% be more productive.
If they want to be productive. That's up to the rep.
But it depends on the use of AI, but 100%. If you're an AE who's AI literate and is using that to drive, it might be automation, but drive more productivity during their day, I think 100%.
A reason why I initially said no is because a lot of people are using AI to be lazy. They're using AI to do the work for them, and therefore they're not being more productive. They're just getting average work out because they're not ready. But an AI, a really good rep that's using AI, 100% agree. They're going to be more productive than the non-AI.
Do you assess for AI capability in an interview process?
No.
We haven't done that.
Would you start to?
That's a good question.
Yeah, it's a really good question.
I don't know if, I think it is becoming increasingly important to have a degree of understanding when it comes to AI and the use of AI and agentic AI to drive productivity. I mean, I'd be concerned if someone is not using AI or that hasn't used AI within their day-to-day. That would be a red flag, I think. But I haven't interviewed and assessed their AI capability. That's an interesting. Are you seeing it in market at the moment?
Yeah.
It's same thing. Everyone goes, yeah, absolutely. They need to be AI literate. What do you assess to that? No. How do you assess
what
that?
Does that mean?
I don't know. But it's interesting because I've got a couple of friends that are like deep into AI, and I've gone from thinking, yes, there's some productivity tools and efficiencies here to like, I'm now of the belief that actually, if implemented effectively, AI can be absolutely transformational. And I think that it can completely and utterly decimate particular functions within organizations. Support, for example, can be automated with AI. First level coding of software. Yeah. Second line coding can be software. Marketing agencies, like all of those functions, I think could be completely decimated by AI. Have you heard of Replit? Yeah. So Replit, it's the competitor to Lovable. It's like a vibe coding app, which is just vibe coding is effectively, by interpretation, it's a funky way of saying it's real language to write code. Yeah. And Replit, I've created I do this in like 10 or 15 minutes, just sitting in bed. I create an entire application that goes off and does a whole bunch of lead sourcing for me. And I've got an application with a dashboard showing me all of the companies that are hiring in Australia right now that don't have the local talent managers in country. In 10 minutes, I was able to create that.
Yeah.
So coming back to, I share your sentiment, Reece. An AI proficient rep will probably give themselves a competitive edge. But again, I don't think there's a maturity in how to assess and implement that and govern it as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The governance piece is really important. You don't want each rep having their own AI agent doing, a bunch of different things. There needs to be a level of
throwing company confidential information in there, which a lot of people are doing.
Correct. And the other issue I see actually with AI, particularly from a top of funnel standpoint, is, one of the issues that we saw maybe 5 years ago, 3 years ago with Outreach and SalesLoft, those kind of prospecting automation tools, is that it was just slop. The messaging was slop. It was just the same generic email, might be persona based if you're lucky, but it's just rubbish.
Question for you. Do you think AI can replace salespeople or any component from sort of junior to senior?
I think it can, as I mentioned before, I think AI at some point will be able very effectively to replace particularly an inbound SDR.
Yeah.
And lead gen people,
And-
just like what you've experienced with your lead gen tool you just made. I mean, you don't need those.
Yeah. But out the challenge I see with outbound is we've gone from no personalization, sloppy emails sent by SDRs to now AI being able to deliver hyper personalized emails. I got an email it was clearly written by AI, but it referenced my amateur boxing. It referenced my dog's name in there, and this is all from an AI agent. So you're moving from no personalization to this hyper personalized stuff, which is clearly AI. And so we've just gone from one slop to another from an outbound perspective. And I still think the phone is king when it comes to booking outbound meetings.
Yep.
The fear I have is that voice AI, when that becomes to a level where it's like a real person and they're asking the right questions and they understand the sales methodologies and qualification, that SDR function is going to be in a bit of trouble.
A bit of trouble, yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's funny. We the personalized email, and you talk about vibe coding. We're talking now at our company that vibe coding is now a thing, but therefore so vibe hacking. And so you can use natural language to go generate malicious emails and malicious things. And obviously, I come from the email security side of things. And the hyper-personalized email is also a fantastic way for a vibe hacking person to go and deliver that. So someone clicks on the link or someone downloads something or someone gives you access to their systems through that email because it's like, this cannot be malicious. It's so personal. And yeah, absolutely, I'll click this link. Yeah. So it's very dangerous from both, productivity levels, but also security levels.
Awesome. I reckon we could go down a rabbit hole for a couple of hours on this topic. I want to start to close because we've been smashing through the time. When we met, we were a lot younger.
Had more hair,
fresh-eyed, bushy-tailed, no kids.
Naivety is bliss sometimes.
Yeah, and fast forward today, we got families and wives, and I think that's a beautiful thing on the whole.
It is.
I'd love to just get your opinion on the impact on building a family in your sales career. Has that impacted your ambition, your capability, your allocation of time to getting the job done?
That's a really good question. A child and a family definitely impacts you and gives you a different way of thinking about work life and social life. I think for me, time allocation outside of work has probably changed more so than my time allocation in work. The reason being is, I do want to, during the week, spend more time with Kai and Amy during the day, but it's not, on the other side is you want to work as hard as you can so that you provide for your family and provide a future. And that's a massive motivation to make any role that I step in to be hyper successful. And I know that you have to do the hours, you have to do the work. And so time allocation socially has probably made more of a shift to being a bit more of a, recluse.
Yep.
Than kind of time allocation during work.
Absolutely. Time in the weekends now is for the family. You can't just go and book a golf tea time or go and just have lunch and dinner with the boys or whatever it is. And
4 hours on a Saturday.
Yeah. Hey, I have golf club dinner membership. Yeah. That's all I have.
Yeah, it's all I have. Is exactly right.
Looks good in the garage.
But I like the way you put that. Time allocation outside of work has definitely shifted. Still important to make time, for the, I have a core group of friends that I've had since kindergarten.
Yeah.
That, every now and then we find the time we all get together and have a dinner. But it's not just hey, what are you doing tomorrow sort of thing. It's, we got to plan it weeks out.
Yeah.
You got to get, permission. You got to put it in the shared calendar and all that, but it's important to make time. But you're right, the time allocation is very much, and because I travel so much as well.
Yeah.
So it's not just I'm working and I'm not working, I'm traveling. So even when I'm not working, I'm still in a hotel room in Asia somewhere. And so I still miss that time. So when I come home, it's very much, even if I land on a Friday morning, that Friday I will turn my phone off and make sure I'm there for the kids and for my wife and everything. Make sure that time allocation at home is priority number one.
I agree. And what I've noticed is the value of a partnership in marriage is critically important. Support, but also like I really see my marriage with Amy like a partnership. Like we're in this together.
We're in together.
We're winning together, and there's always going to be sacrifices, whichever way you look at it. But if you've got someone that is truly compatible and aligned with what you're trying to do, and you treat each other with respect and integrity, and have a shared value system, I think that's good. It's very. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for the time today. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Great conversations. Would love to keep going, but let's call it a day there.
Fantastic.
Cheers.
Thank you. Cheers, guys.
Thanks.